And we're live again.
We're live
Good
again.
to be back.
Mm-hmm.
So, Pablo, share with us the story or the interaction you had very recently with a business owner, immigrant. Um,
Okay. So last night we went out to dinner, and the owner of the restaurant, when we always go, he approaches us and we talk to him. It's very pleasant conversation always. And he was sharing a story that he was talking to a client of his that same day in the morning. And this client told him, hey, look, um, I've got 3 kids. I came to this country with nothing. Um, I've built something, and now I find myself with my kids that are growing up. One of them is 15, the other one is 12, the other one is 17, something like that. And they won't help them with anything. They, all they want to do is watch TV or be on social media. They go to school, but they're constantly tied to that cell phone. And he's just very disappointed in the way the kids are coming up. And so, my friend was telling me, look, this is a conversation I had this morning. And surprisingly enough, a lot of people talk about this,
yeah,
you know? And so I told him, hey, it's something that happens nowadays because this is very alluring, you know? It draws the kids in. It kind of like even, I would say, even hypnotizes them, you know? They watch it and they're like confounded to it. You can't even talk to them when they're on it. And if you, God forbid, you turn it off, then they have start crying or whatever, depending on the age.
yeah. The phone complicates things, but also he was talking. You had shared he was talking about that that they've given too much to their kids, or at least that was the perspective.
Well, his friends that was talking to him apparently gave, and it's something that's very typical. We're immigrants. We come to this country. We work very hard. Anybody that works hard in this country will do well, okay? And potentially. And then you want to give your kids everything that you didn't have. Uh, and that potentially is a mistake because Jordan Peterson says, look, let them go through a little bit of a struggle, you know? Because if you make life easy for them continuously, then what are the little challenges that they're going to face that are going to turn them into the people that they must become in order to be able to face bigger challenges down the road?
Right.
And so it's one of those things that it's a catch 22. You want to give your kids everything you didn't have, but in the process, you're creating a monster because they won't appreciate it if they don't work for it. And if, they don't struggle for something, it doesn't mean anything for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how through the generations, let's say if the immigrants or the children of immigrants built up some sort of business or wealth, through the generations it can get lost because the new generations don't know how to work it or maintain that business or don't want anything to do with that business or
Correct. I went to another place that I also frequent, also a restaurant, and there was a kid in there with a broom sweeping the floor. And I was just amazed because when I found out the age of the child, he was 9 years old. He was sweeping the floors, and when he was done sweeping the floors, he was cleaning the tables, you know, and the his body movement and his demeanor, I knew this wasn't the first time he was doing it. I mean, he had it down, okay? He knew every corner, every this, every that. So not only was he taught to do it, but you can tell he's done it before many a times, and he's 9 years old. So that kid, um, in my book, I think that kid potentially will go very far. He's developing work skills and ethic.
Yeah. And they're
He's not,
starting them young.
yeah, he's not tied to a cell phone. So,
You know, it's interesting. I've talked to some people and I ask them, hey, are your children interested in the business? Are they working in the business? And they say, no, they're too young. They're 16. No, they're too young. They're 12 or 18. And I'm thinking to myself, that's too old.
it's too late.
It's too late. They didn't learn as children. It reminds me when we used to do work on those projects and that old man that would walk by every time we were
Oh,
working outside of the building doing some sort of, we were painting, we were working on the property, and this old man would go by and he would say, hay que educarse,
yeah,
you gotta go to school, you gotta get educated, is what he was saying. But he was saying it to us, but he was saying it to you because you were putting us to work as kids.
oh yeah, for sure.
And you got critiqued a lot, right?
Oh,
For
I got murdered.
people were saying that you shouldn't have your kids work and things like that, right?
Correct. Oh, all the time. I mean, we had a recorder at home, and to get messages when we weren't there, and some of the messages were brutal from friends and family members. Oof. Oh yeah, it was brutal. I remember when we moved from our first house into the second home. I remember that what you guys might have been, 12, 10,
Yeah.
and 8, something like that. And you guys were helping us unload the stuff from the truck, put things in their places, and you were helping us take everything down and so forth. And I'll never forget it. Our new neighbor, at the end of the day, came up to me and said, listen, I don't know what you've done, but I have never seen young kids like this work so hard in my entire life. I've never seen it. And to us, it was just a regular day. It was a weekend. You weren't going to school. So you were helping us out because we needed help. You weren't the only ones, and you weren't carrying stuff that I wasn't letting you get hurt or anybody else in the family. But yeah, if you can carry a chair, by all means, go do it and go
Yeah.
put it over there. That's the way I was brought up. So I think that goes a long way. Now, my friend was saying that some of these kids won't even take the trash out for their father. They won't even take the trash out.
So from your perspective, because I have mine, and now I look back and I do appreciate that you guys put us to work because you taught us at an early age, hey, you got to help out with stuff. You have to have a good work ethic. And we learn things at an earlier age because we had to do it. We didn't have a choice. Now, from your perspective, where did that person, let's say, not that you're judging, but where do you think they went wrong when they have a kid that won't dump the trash? Where do you think that maybe they went wrong and they could fix that issue?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a clinical psychologist, and all I know is that if the family needs help, everybody has to chip in. There's no such thing as one person sitting down doing something when everybody else is working. So I would go and tap on that person's shoulder and say, hey, I need help because we're family. You were my kids. No problem. But I can see how, later on it can become an issue because if you're not used to doing something, you're probably thinking, I don't need to do that. I don't have to do that, and it's a problem. There's a video on Facebook where this father has a lawnmower and he's running over all the games of his kid, all these kinds of video games that the kid has. And the kid is about 17, 18 years old, 19 years old, and he has a fit and he just destroys them because that's all the kid's doing. He's not doing anything else, you know? You create people. You know that saying, a body in motion tends to stay in motion? Well, if you sit in a couch eating Kringles all day long, you're going to be there. You're going to turn into a couch potato. So that's not happening
So as a
in our
parent,
watch.
you would have to force the kid to get to work. You
I had
gotta
no
help out.
choice.
Yeah.
I had no choice growing up. We didn't have a gardener. I was the gardener. And it wasn't an automatic one that you turn on or whatever.
Yeah.
It was one of these
But that
rollerblade
was
things.
because of necessity. I remember
I think they
asking.
could have paid for a gardener. Maybe not. When we got here, we didn't have anything. That's right.
But because I remember asking a friend, business owner, very successful, how he was, what drove him. I asked that question to a lot of clients I would sit in front of, and what drives you? What drove you? And he says necessity when he came to this country from Mexico. And then I asked him about his children, because I've always been really curious about, you see certain families, right? Certain businesses here in Southern California. You have the Portos family that has been able to, through the generations, from the first generation immigrants, children that were immigrants, and then now, I think it's 4 or 5 generations in, something like that. The Gaviñas also have been able to maintain the businesses. And then others that aren't able to maintain those businesses through the generations. It's always been curious to me. But the answer, going back to that gentleman who owns the restaurants, he said that they don't have the necessity that he had. And so they don't have that drive that he had. So when you can afford a gardener, and you can afford all these things, and a painter and all that, maybe even though you can afford it, still having your children do it or help you with it, and that's maybe what can instill some of this work ethic and maybe drive. Because one thing I remember, a good friend, Bill, which I respect a lot, I was asking like a question on social media: can you instill drive or ambition, or is that something that's just built within? Because I remember one time I got a call from a lady in corporate, and she's like, hey, I'm thinking of hiring on this person, but they're not sure about the business of securities and life insurance. Can you talk to them and let them know the opportunity that it is, what a great opportunity and everything? And I remember telling her, absolutely, absolutely. I'm happy to share with her the great opportunity is, but the one thing I can't do is, if they're not driven and they don't have it in them, that ambition, they're not going to succeed in this business, because that part, no matter how great an opportunity it is, you can't teach that. At least that was my perspective at the time. And I remember my good friend Bill, him saying that there are a lot of factors that lead to ambition and drive, because he's like a teacher. He has a teacher's perspective. And I think that...
Well, what did he say? Did he mention any of those factors?
Trying to recall at the moment what he was saying, that not only is it like having, let's say, a good teacher, but also your upbringing, and then also who you are at birth. I don't remember the exact, but there were several elements that go into drive. Because I was just coming out and saying, you either have it or you don't, like ambition and drive. I don't think it's something that can be taught, but a guy like Gary Vee thinks that everybody can become an entrepreneur.
You know, for the person that's 15 years old and doesn't want to help their father or mother do something around the house because they're used to paying for every service because they can, because that father and mother has attained a certain level of wealth that they can pay for something. The suggestion there would be, well, it may be too late, but the thought that it's never too late is what I try to adhere to.
Hmm.
And so what you want to do is you tell them, hey, you know what? Tomorrow we're going to get up and we're going to paint this wall. We're going to do it. So it's not that you're going to tell your kid, you paint the wall while I sit down and watch you. You know?
Together.
Do it together. Okay? Like a lot of times when we were doing work, I was working right along with you guys.
Right.
You know? It's not this thing, you guys got to do this for me, and that's the end of that. Now, when I was growing up and I was mowing the lawn and we were renting and stuff like that, the house we were renting, nobody was mowing the lawn with me. I was doing it myself. But when it came time to pick up, then, you know, my aunt would help me a little bit, and my dad, if he was awake, he would help too, because my dad worked evenings, so he had to sleep in the mornings. He was a newspaper man, so he worked all the on the night shift. But if you make your kids' life too easy, you're gonna have problems. Not only you, they are gonna have problems, because they're not gonna develop the skills that would allow them to confront the things that come up in life, okay, when they're alone.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When they are alone, when they have to make a decision on their own.
Look at the, I mean, I agree 100%. Because you can't be there always for them.
No.
Look at the situation that we recently came across. We're looking at a property for investment. There's two partners. One of them passes away.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The child of that partner,
Right.
as a favor, the partner that's still alive allows the child of the partner, which is a grown person, to move in and occupy one of the properties there as a favor to his friend.
Correct.
And they destroyed the place.
They destroy.
So they are going to inherit part of the proceeds of this.
It's
property.
their property too.
It's their property, and
50% of it.
They destroyed it, and the gentleman we're talking to, nicest guy, couldn't fathom. I could tell that he couldn't understand how somebody who it's their property, they're part owners, could destroy a place.
Yeah, they let it go to waste.
Yeah. And this gentleman's upbringing, you can tell that he's the type of guy that's an honest, straight shooter, just takes care of things, old school kind of approach. So it reminds me, I remember a customer I was talking to one time, and she says, "En qué cabeza cabe?" Something like that. It's like, in what brain or head can that in what world can that exist? He couldn't fathom that or understand how somebody can destroy something that's theirs. And he was also sharing an example of one of the tenants prior to this situation.
He had it immaculate.
For 7 years, was occupying this place and left it in a better shape than when he got it.
Immaculate.
And they were a tenant.
Yeah, immaculate.
So,
and he was just a tenant.
But he was a guy that, had certain values, and he said, "Hey, I need to take care of a place. My mom taught me to take care of the place," and so.
Yeah, those values are instilled from childhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I adhere to the idea, never lose hope. But it's definitely a lot harder later on in life to instill that. Okay? I would think. Because, you're already, it's like a tree, that grows. I don't know if you've ever done bonsai trees. I had a project in high school for a bonsai tree for the whole quarter or whatever. And you had to take this tree and between tweaking it a little bit and moving it and putting little sticks and bending it and little rubber bands and this and that, you end up with make the tree grow in the direction that you want to.
Hmm.
Okay? So the analogy is, if that tree is growing crooked already, in order to make that tree, grow straight, it's going to take a tremendous amount of energy, and you might even break the bark, or the stem of it. Or so it's definitely harder later on in life. Is it impossible? I don't think so, because then you end up losing hope in a certain portion of humanity.
Right.
So it's not impossible, but it might take something of a shock
I was
to the
gonna say.
system, to that person.
I was gonna say that it may be eventually the parent saying, you know what, this is where my help ends. You know, because those children will be humbled one day, right? We'll all be humbled one day if life does that to you.
Yeah.
Life will do that to you. So I think eventually it's gonna hit them, but it might hit them at a point where maybe they won't be able to handle it, or maybe they will. But
But life has changed. I see a lot of young parents today in restaurants and in so forth, areas that we go to, and their young kids. It's easy to give them the cell phone and put a little muñequito, or a little movie for them, or whatever, and they quiet down. They don't have to mess with them
Yeah.
in public. They
It's a
don't make a
sedative.
scene necessarily. Huh?
it's a sedative.
Yeah, yeah. It's easy to do. So we all fall prey to that. Okay? There has to be a conscious effort on the part of the parents to minimize this and to increase the communion, the activity of the family, the games. Let's go outside and play. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a picture on Facebook where it shows a mom in the 1960s pulling the kid by the ear into the house because the kid was outside playing, riding bicycles, jumping on trees, messing around with the water hose, whatever. And then just below it, okay, there is the same mother with the same kid, but nowadays, and she's pulling him by the ear to go outside, and he's with, the cell phone and a computer inside the house. He doesn't want to go outside. He just wants to see this. So, definitely,
That's cool. It's cool how pictures can say so much, huh?
I see that kind of stuff, and yeah, 1,000 words. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's a whole novel.
Yeah.
That's 10,000 words.
It's
because
describing one of the biggest issues that we have in modern days
in modern day,
in
you know?
society. Yeah.
She's grabbing him by the ear, pulling him out of the house because all he's doing is sitting there with
Yeah.
this. And I'll tell you.
It's a world. I mean, it's got its positive things.
Well, I like mysteries and things that I cannot understand, and I like the engineering stuff and mathematical things. And, I'll get on one of those things, and it leads me to another one and another one. And sure, I'm learning, right? I'm learning something new. But nevertheless, I'm there.
Right.
At some point, you have to have the ability to break away. And apparently, according to Jordan Peterson, it's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
But my only advice is make your kids work with you. I mean, there was no choice when I was growing up. And if I didn't do it, I would get whacked over the head or something.
Yeah.
Get out there and get it done. Now, like, what's the name of this comedian that I like a lot? He's George Lopez.
Oh. Right.
He's funny. He's really funny, but he says things that are very, very true. He says, "Hey, our kids wouldn't be able to last a day in our childhood,
Yeah.
And he grew up in a Hispanic childhood, and so if he didn't do, he had to do what he was told to do or fear death,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And there's that famous chancleta, right? But you see that also in Middle Eastern countries and
Oh,
stuff like that. When the kids are messing up, the first thing that mother goes for is, what do you call it? The sandal.
yeah.
And,
Now,
um,
now we've talked about in the past before. You're talking about disciplining your kids, right? Oh, in schools, it used to be something that the teachers were disciplining the kids, and we've moved away from that, right? Because, well, in most places, I think, because that maybe wasn't the role of a teacher. But if let's say the teachers aren't disciplining the kids, and maybe the parents aren't disciplining the kids as much, who's disciplining the
they're
kids?
running amok. Nobody is,
Yeah.
you know. Somebody has to step in. But look, the the kid has to have a certain degree of respect for the person that's taking care of them. The minute that person loses the respect, I mean, we could talk for weeks, Mike. You know, there's that theory. Well, no, I don't. I want to be my child's friend, right, and all that stuff. Well, maybe that works later on in life when this child has attained a certain degree of adulthood and they realize what they have and how hard it is to make some money, how hard it is to make a living, put a roof over your head, put food on the table, the basic necessities of life that sometimes are difficult, to come by. For some people it's easier, for others it's extremely hard. They have to work all day to get food on the table, all day. They're doing menial jobs or whatever the case is. It doesn't matter. We're all the same. But if the child loses respect for the parent, you're in a world of hurt because you need to gain that respect back, I think. And then again, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I don't know much of any of this, but I think you have
No,
to
you're
gain
speaking
that.
from your experience.
From my experience, you need to have that respect in order to be able to gain ground. If you don't have that respect, then, what is that kid gonna do? Run away from home? I mean, I had a buddy of mine that the kid, I mean, at the age of 16, he tried to institute some discipline because the kid was living with the mom. It was a divorce situation, and the mom let him do whatever he wanted to. When he came to live with the father, he said, "These are the rules." And the guy said, "No, I'm not going by those rules. I'm leaving." And he left. And they didn't find him for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Fortunately, they found him okay. But he was gone for 2, 3 weeks because he wasn't willing to go through the new rules that the dad was instituting, because at mom's house he could do anything. That story ended well because he came back to the father and said, "Hey, okay, I'm going to do what you say." But I don't know many parents that would be willing to take the risk of having that child 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was 3 weeks, outside of the household. You're exposed to God knows what. That could end really, really bad. So when you weigh the two, you probably say, "Okay, fine. It's difficult."
Right. Yeah. But I hear what you're saying about parents that want to be friends to their children. They want to be, let's say, it's loved instead of feared. But, and maybe there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever works for, like, maybe some children don't need as much discipline. They're just kids that kind of on their own, they're self, they're kind of
No,
just, you think all kids?
no. All kids need to be told, "Hey, this is right and this is wrong in this household.
But some
You
kids
don't do this here and you don't do
some
that there."
kids seem like they need more discipline than others.
Maybe so. Yeah,
It
some are
seems.
rebellious. Yeah.
Seems like some really want to test the boundary and others are more calm. And don't.
Yeah, well, that goes with the character. But for example, I remember a family member would bring the kids over, and they were nice kids and everything. But one of them, when he sat on the couch, he would put his shoes on the couch, his feet on the couch. He'd just take his knee up and put his knee on the couch. And, um, I didn't like that at all, because I didn't have anybody else doing that. And if I allowed him to do that, then all the other cousins would be doing it too, because they see him doing it. That's okay to do. So, and I remember telling him, hey, put your foot down. And he didn't want to do it. And I said, put your foot down or you're going to get out of here. And that created an issue with the family because they were cousins and so forth. And so then, they're, hey, don't talk to my child that way. And I said, no problem. Yeah. Tell him to put his foot down. He's not going to put his foot on my couch and sit there like,
like he owns the place.
Yeah, like he owns the place, because you don't,
Yeah.
And
that's a difficult one because you have different households as
you got
families
that right.
grow, and then everyone raises their children a certain way, and maybe in their house you could put your feet wherever you want, but once they come into your domain,
and I would shock them into submission. Like the minute I saw that he would do that, like the first couple times, I said, take your foot off that couch. And he did it. But then he developed the
resilience.
And he wouldn't do it. He went on, he came at me. He just wouldn't do it. And then that became a problem.
Yeah.
And we had a family issue over that, because,
Because you and I, we admire strong characters. Let's say, at birth, right? We admire that how a child can be such a strong character, and so the idea is you don't want to break that character. You don't want to break the child, but they need some sort of guidance. And I'm speaking not being a parent at all, right? But it's a balance of not breaking that character, yet guiding them.
For sure. No, listen, there's no easy way. It's, when a flower is growing, you have to give it energy. You have to love it. You have to cultivate it. You have to give it water. You got to make sure that it has enough dirt or whatever that it grows in, fertilizer, It takes energy, time, okay? The same thing goes for a kid. You got to be present. The biggest gift that you can give them is being present and raising those children, I think. Again, I'm no expert. What do I know about this? Nothing. So I'm not, but even, there's one of my grandkids right now, does not want to say thank you. I want this, I want that, I want this other thing. Say thank you, please. There's no thank you coming out of that, but there will be, because I'm beginning to say thank you first.
You're trying to
it's
condition the child.
If somebody, you say thank you first. You want it? Okay, I'm going to give it to you. Say thank you first.
Yeah.
And so if the parents saw me, they might say, oh, so, I don't want to get myself in trouble.
Yeah, but those are your, this is the way.
Yeah, you want it? Say thank you, because we can't get a thank you out of that person.
They're ungrateful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And no, and it's, when they want something, it's not, oh, let me have that little piece of, I want that bread. It's pretty demanding.
Demands.
Yeah, it's commanding. And you're right. You don't want to, that's character. Okay?
At birth.
Yeah, So it's amazing. You have 3 kids, in my case, 3 kids raised in the same household under pretty much the same conditions, because everybody was treated
Similar conditions.
Yeah, and everybody came out different.
Sure. Well, someone told us, I forgot who it was recently. I heard this gentleman said, but they weren't raised in the same conditions because, my wonderful piano teacher. She says the mom is different. I think it was her. The mom is different at every age that the child is born.
Oh, that's a good point.
So it's not the same conditions. You know, the first child, the mom is a certain way, doesn't know certain things. Then second child, and then years later, right? So from her perspective,
That's very interesting. You know, and I'll just say this. I don't know how long we've been going at it, but it's very interesting because, for example, when we had our first child, we took like 10,000 pictures. And then on the second one, we probably took like 5,000 pictures. But on the third one, we might have taken 1,000 pictures. You know, I'm just guessing, right? But
yeah,
it diminishes. And so our last one is saying, how come I don't have a lot of pictures? And but you do. Look at all these pictures that we still took pictures, but not as many as the first one, you know?
yeah,
So that is a good point. We do change with time,
sure.
you know? Absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll wrap it up there.
We'll wrap it up there.